I have turned on recording. I have a note to do that, and I've turned on closed captioning. So with luck, we'll actually have a transcript of what we're talking about tonight. And we're going to start off with a question and answer about anything except baseball. Well, not anything, but we're not going to talk about baseball anymore.
May I ask a technique question in videoing?
Sure.
How do you stop? What's the best way to block wind noise if you're using an iPhone?
The best way to block wind noise is to use an external microphone. There are microphones that are designed to plug into the iPhone, and you can also get wireless ones. And those little styrofoam black mushroom things that you stick over the microphone, that's the best way to block wind noise. It's inelegant and it requires extra equipment, but there's really no other way. Um, every time I take a ferry ride and I'm out taking video of the of Mount Rainier or Victoria, wherever it is we happen to be going. Um, uh, I jokingly refer to it as the wind song because that's the only thing you can actually hear is the wind crossing the boat. But there's really no other way to block it. What it does on a electronic schedule on a electrical uh, level, it just breaks up the wind and it creates noise, but it's not the same kind of noise. Yeah, so the noise is still there, but it lessens it and it breaks it up, which is why it works. It also works if someone's speaking and they have a whole bunch of plosive sounds or a bunch of sibilant S's. It helps with that as well.
Well, when you say external mic, uh, I've got a little lavalier mic that's, you have to charge it, but I don't think it would last long enough. I don't think the charge would last long enough. It would have to last for like 8 hours.
8 hours.
Well, the last hike we went on, we left at 7 in the morning and we didn't get back until 5 in the evening. Now I wasn't filming all that time, but I was filming for between between 8 a.m. in the morning and 4 in the afternoon.
Well, there might be somebody that has one that you can plug into something like an external battery pack, like you use for iPhones or something.
Uh,
I don't really know. My most experience with that is doing short little clips. Um, well, I'm wearing my Noah shirt today. At Noah, one of the things we developed was a video kiosk. We called it, what was it called? Ocean Kiosk is what we called it. And it was a website and as well as kiosks that at some of our field sites where you could press a button and it would show you dolphins or press another one and it would talk about tides and so on and so forth. So we'd film these like 3 to 5 minute films at the ocean, and the ocean is noisy, and the way around that was to use the um, I don't remember what they call those little styrofoam mushrooms. They're not styrofoam, foam mushrooms, but they fit over the microphone. It cuts down on the wind noise quite a bit. The other way we did it, which is requires more work, is we go to the ocean and we do whatever we were doing, and we come back and the sound wasn't good, and we do overdubbing. But then you have to actually time what you're saying to the film, and if you don't, it looks like you're dubbing in a foreign language, which can be funny, but it kind of defeated the purpose of what we were doing for education. And these were things that were only 3 to 5 minutes. Believe it or not, for a science agency to get a 3 to 5 minute film sometime would take several weeks and a couple dozen people because the Information Quality Act says it has to be unbiased, complete, accurate, science-based, data-driven, a whole bunch of things. And so we'd have to have a whole bunch of people who would take our video and explain what it was in a way that was accurate. And then we also had to follow the Plain Language Act and have it intelligible to normal human beings with our standard was an eighth grade education. So we sometimes, like, for example, describing GPS. with to people with an eighth grade education, I assure you, is a real challenge. But that's what we did, and that's why sometimes these 3 to 5 minute films will take 2 weeks to make.
Well, if anybody has any suggestions about what brand of, microphone and battery pack and so on, because I part of the problem if I'm hiking is that, if I try to clip a lavalier mic on, the backpack can knock it off, and I might not know it. So I'd have to have something that I could secure to me somehow and would fit in the phone.
What you might do is just go out and get crowdsourced opinions because there are a lot of people who do that sort of thing. They narrate their hikes or they narrate their fishing trips or whatever the heck they're doing, and they encounter this. And I have seen YouTube videos on how to do this. I just don't. It's not something I paid attention to in like 8 years because it's not something I do anymore. But there are a lot of people out there doing this sort of stuff, and there are some um, battery-powered microphones that work with Bluetooth. Bluetooth microphones I don't normally recommend because there's too many ways to have interference, but if you're hiking, that Bluetooth microphone's only going to be a couple feet from the recording device, so it shouldn't be that bad a problem. But I would just look around. Um, B&H Video, which is a company on the East Coast, has a huge line of things like this. And Amazon. The trouble with Amazon is that a lot of the stuff you have is no-name brands, and it's hard to tell what's real. Like this one brand of I can't remember what it was I was buying, but it cracked me up. They said that they'd sold hundreds in the past couple weeks, but according to Amazon's own little odometer there, they'd sold something like 18, and they had three 5-star reviews, and that was it. So doesn't inspire too much confidence. But B&H Video is a good place. There's another one called Sweetwater that does um, electronics that are used by bands, but also by churches, and so they have a they have good. Both of these have good reputations.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Yes, Paul, you need to turn on your microphone. You also have
All
to,
right,
what does the V stand for?
Victor.
Victor, which is kind of my first name. Lawrence is also Laurel.
Okay. Yeah, I use that because there's other Paul Hansons around, so I try to distinguish myself from other people.
If you come to Minnesota, there are Hansons all over the place.
Oh my God, yeah, yeah, that's Scandinavian there. Anyway, my question. In the morning, uh, when I log on, try to check my email and the news and stuff sort of through the internet, oftentimes the phone is really slow. And in fact, sometimes it says not connected to the internet.
Your phone?
Pardon?
Your phone, you said?
Yeah, my iPhone. And I found that sometimes if I turn it off and turn it back on again, it seems to work better. Um, and I'm wondering, is that an issue with the phone, or is it just my imagination? And because the bandwidth here is I'm with CenturyLink, and it's kind of marginal. And I'm
Well,
wondering if there's a lot of people that are using it in the morning, and it just kind of overloads the whole thing.
it's unlikely to be that. I will tell you that CenturyLink, I like to make fun of it. My mother had CenturyLink, and I used to tell people that they were used to telecommunications from the previous century, but they weren't a 21st century link. They were only a 20th century link. Our church had CenturyLink. We got a maximum throughput on the internet of 70K, um, which that's dial-up speed for if you remember the days of dial-up modems.
Oh
So
my God, yeah.
CenturyLink is, I would put it on dead last of places around here that I'd want to have for
Well, I'm
internet.
looking to change, but
But on your phone, unless you're using, well, uh, is your phone set up so it will use Wi-Fi instead of cell when you're in your home?
yeah.
I will tell you that you should experiment with turning that off. Uh,
Oh,
Quite often, if you're on a local area network that has poor throughput, and that is kind of CenturyLink's standard, you'll get better response if you just turn it off and you go talk directly to cell tower. Now, where I am, I have Verizon on my phone, and Verizon doesn't work in my home. So I use the Wi-Fi in order for my phone to work at all. But if I wander around in town, it's fine.
okay.
So I use, but I have wave cable at home, and I use that as my
Oh,
my phone link when I'm at home, and that
okay.
works quite well. But if you have terrible Wi-Fi, you're sometimes better off just turning it on to the cell. The other things to think about, if your phone is old, some of the older phones have trouble waking up. So you mentioned that this problem was a problem in the morning. Your phone, when you put it to, when you, I charge my phone at night. And when I wake up in the morning, the first thing I do is log in. If you don't log in, it'll stay asleep. And so then when you wake it up, it still might be in the process of waking up, especially if it's an older phone with an older battery, because
Yeah.
it goes into that deep sleep in order to preserve the battery. But it also means that it wakes up slow.
Okay. It's about a year and a half old.
Oh, that's not a problem then. That's not the
Yeah,
problem.
it's a iPhone 13, I believe. So
That's actually about 3 years or 3 or 4 years old, but be that as it may, that shouldn't be the problem. It's probably your Wi-Fi. I know that when I'm downtown some places like out at Cary Blake, um, I'm better off just taking over the air cell service than I am trying to use anybody's Wi-Fi. Um,
okay. So well, although it's got the little icon thing that shows you how your Wi-Fi is and how your phone is, and oftentimes I've got two or three bars on the Wi-Fi and only one bar on the phone. So
well, here's the thing to think about though. The little bars you get from the Wi-Fi mean that in that house you can talk to your Wi-Fi at good speed. Doesn't mean your house is talking to the rest of the world.
right, that's what I was
You'll see
wondering.
a
Yeah,
lot of you see a lot of people will say, you can get 10 gigs worth of speed at home. Yeah, but if you got a 70K pipe out to the outside world, you're only going to get 70K.
yeah, yeah. Well, so what is the speed that I should look for? What's a reasonable speed that I should be or
Well,
anybody should be looking at?
there are some places in Swim that have fiber, and it's gig fiber.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. I'm
But
talking.
that's
Yeah,
but that's in Squim. I don't live in Squim.
yeah.
The wave that I pay for, it's supposed to be gig down, but it's only 20 or 30 megs up, which for most people would be fantastic. But given the kind of things that I do, I find it extremely limiting. When I was
Okay.
living in Maryland, I had gig down and gig up. And at work, because I worked for NOAA, I
Yeah,
had 100 gigs down and 100 gigs up.
yeah.
But I work.
So what can we expect from or what would be something that I should strive for when I'm looking for other sources?
That's really hard to say because it depends greatly on where you are. My church, for example, was on CenturyLink, and they had this terrible 70K, and we wanted to see if we could hook it into Wave Cable, and Wave Cable ended at the street, which was, a football field away. And they said to patch them into to Wave, it would cost $10,000 to
Hmm.
dig a trench. And the church said, ha, 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 ha. And
Yeah.
so we went with not with CenturyLink. We went with OliPen. And we have a microwave link, not a cable. a microwave link from our church to this building on the other side of Washington, and that's 100 megabit both way link, which was a huge step up. So, the church is happy, but it depends a lot on where you're located. And because we have mountains and trees and we're nowhere near Seattle or any other big place,
Yeah.
it can vary just within a block in terms of what is available. Um, I don't have a recommendation. Wave Cable is the biggest provider around here. Some people have Wi-Fi internet where they buy this box, and the box is about it's about the size of a bread box, if you know what a bread box is. It's got an antenna on it, and it gets a cell signal to your home, and then it provides Wi-Fi for your entire home. But you have to be really near a tower, and T-Mobile does that, and Verizon does that, and AT&T does that. But where you are, that could be a complete non-starter. You could just get absolutely nothing at all. So
Yeah.
it depends a lot on, it doesn't depend a lot. It depends entirely on where you are. In
Yeah.
Seattle, it's very easy to get fiber almost anywhere. On Bellevue, it's very easy to get fiber almost anywhere. And fiber is the best because
Of course.
unlike wireless Wi-Fi, it's also secure. There's no way to tap into it.
Yeah.
With Wi-Fi, people can steal the signal and basically spy on you. But around here, your choices are very limited. Um, and I know some people have Dish, and Dish sounds great. You just point this dish up into the sky and you've got internet. The trouble is that's good only for download. The transmitting upload quite often is over your phone line. So the upload speed can be just terrible. It could take
Mhm.
you all day to send a picture of your granddaughter to your aunt or something. Uh,
Yeah.
so
Okay.
it just depends a lot on where you are. There's no um, I don't have an answer for you.
Yeah. Well, there's a thing you can go on, and it will interrogate your system and tell you how fast it is going in and out. I think
Oh, there are
that's
lots of things
yeah.
like that.
But so what sort of speed do I strive for? You said something about a gig?
Well, a gig, you have to remember that I used to build websites for a living, and even though I don't do that anymore, I'm still kind of addicted to the kind of access I had.
Yeah.
To get a streaming video download, you need probably at least 20, 30 megs. To get
Okay.
streaming video up, you don't really want to go too much below 10.
Okay.
And so I would have that as the ballpark. But again, where you are located, that may not be
Right.
possible. I have a friend who lives out on off of Palo Alto, and she's lucky if she can get text messages. Um,
Yeah. No, we're yeah, our text works pretty good, and all
Text
right.
messages is a low hanging fruit. It
Yeah. Yeah.
You can get text messages even if your phone won't allow you to
Yeah.
send
I know. Yeah. We
calls.
do that in the mountains sometimes. Yeah.
Yeah, because it requires the least amount of bandwidth, which is why it was a real ripoff when they charged you 10 cents per message, because it's the cheapest thing they do. It was free money for them. But it just depends on your location. And you can be literally a block away from somebody else who has fine access and you can't get it.
Yeah. All
Yeah,
right. Well, that will give me something to shoot for. Good. Thank you.
Carol, you were going to say something?
I had 3 bars ordinarily, sometimes 4, and I had 2 bars, and I couldn't make a call anywhere.
Yes, that's possible.
I couldn't, it may start or ring, and then it would just fail.
Yeah, that's entirely possible. I was really surprised one day. I was in Silverdale, and somebody called me on the phone. I just happened to glance at the connectivity, and it said I had 5G, and I was just so excited because, ooh, I have this fast internet in a place that I really don't care, but it still excited me. Yes, that indication is sort of like if you've updated your computer and you see that thermometer bar and it says it's 5 minutes less, 5 minutes or less until it's finished. That's highly inaccurate, and so are those little bars. Uh,
Uh,
they're basically reassurance bars. They're not really an accurate measure.
well, I know we had our TV was going out. We have um, not Dish, we have Direct TV, and they had to move the the dish, receiver from the east side of the house because the next door neighbor's trees were blocking the satellite.
Mm.
They had to move it to the west side of the house, and now we have TV.
Yeah, that's not the least bit unusual. The one of the things that I learned a lot about at NOAA was GPS. And GPS without correction at the equator is good. The accuracy is good for about half a kilometer, which means that you'll have this circle around you of a half a kilometer, and that's the accuracy. When the farther north you go or the farther south you go, the farther from the equator, the less accurate it is. And that's because the GPS satellites circle the equator. They're geostationary. And to
Huh?
get a decent lock, you have to have at least 3 to 5 satellites that you get a signal from, and then it measures the timing from those satellites to figure out where you are. That's how it works. In order to improve the accuracy, my agency, National Ocean Service, developed something called the Geospatial Reference Model. And the Geospatial Reference Model corrected that so that at the equator, you could get it down to about a foot accuracy. And in Maryland, you could get it down to about 7 feet of accuracy. And where we are, it was about 14 feet of accuracy, which means that as you're going down the road, it actually knew that you were on the road rather than a farm field. Unfortunately, the team that did all of this, they got fired in March. So the GPS is getting gradually less and less and less accurate because you have to constantly update it. Our planet is not a perfect globe. It's lumpy. And it's also, and the GPS signals is affected by gravity. Gravity is lowest in the United States in the Florida Keys, and it's highest in the uh, um, upper part of Michigan. And I'm not going to explain why. So it's the shape of the Earth, it's the gravity, it's electromagnetic things. Every time we have a solar storm, GPS gets less accurate because it interferes with the signals. All of that causes problems. Also causing problems are if you don't live in a flat area, if you have trees. Well, guess what? We don't live in a flat area and we have trees. So it all puts together, it's really hard to get things from a satellite, whether it's GPS or TV or anything, to where we are. We just happen to be in a place that's very beautiful, but it has problems dealing with the modern world. So I will not bore you anymore about how GPS is done. But I wrote pages about it, so you can look on the internet and explain it. Any other questions?
I have when have you looked at the new iOS and macOS 26s yet?
Yes, I have.
And are you gonna just go into some of the key features?
If you have a question, I'll answer the question, but I actually want to talk about those next month because I just put iOS, not iOS, I put macOS on the machine that I'm using right this second. I did that at like noon today. So it's still in the process of figuring out how it wants to do things. And the same thing with iOS. I did that yesterday. And iOS 26, there's one thing that I really, really like. I still have a Maryland phone number because I had it for 26 years. Well, 20 years, something like that, before I moved out here. So I kept that. And because it's a Maryland phone number, and because Washington, D.C. is in is next door. And because it's full of politicians and because it's an election year for Maryland this year, I get tons upon tons of spam from all kinds of political groups, from candidates, from just a whole bunch of things. One of the things with iOS 26 that I was really looking forward to was call screening. There is a setting that you can set in iOS 26 where if you get a call and they're not in your address book, it asks them who you are and why you're calling. Now
Oh,
that seems simple, but robots can't answer. And if it doesn't get a response from them, your phone doesn't even ring. So between yesterday and today, I looked at my phone. I've had about 40 phone calls that never rang because they were by robots.
oh
And
wow.
they didn't bother me at all. Now, you want to be a little bit careful about this because if you have a prescription at Walgreens and they send you a text message that it's ready and you don't have that in your address book, well, actually, text message, you'll still get the text message. But if they were to send you a recording saying, it's ready, it wouldn't answer. And if it's your doctor's office sending out an automated reminder to come in, you're not going to get that. So you have to be a little bit careful about that. Text messages, it's got a way to do filtering of text messages too, but it was the phone calls that I found the most irritating. And now I just don't hear them at all. Um, and I was also surprised. I got a couple calls that came through, and I thought, you're in my contacts, but apparently, yeah, some people that were in my contacts. Sometimes, if it's somebody that you've talked to in the past, even though you haven't explicitly made them a contact, your phone remembers that, oh yeah, you talked to that person before, so they'll still get through. So I really like the way that it works. My brother is a retired spook, meaning he's a uh, retired spy. He and I were trying to think about how people would work around it. And then the answer is the way Apple's done it, it's going to take some effort. Right now, you can, if you, I even get spam about this. You'll get offers that you can get these buy these kits that allow you to become a telemarketer and the kit only costs like 600 bucks. Well, that equipment that they sell you costs way less than $600. They make their money from selling you these telemarketer kits, but the what the telemarketer kits do is they just dial a whole bunch of phone numbers in a block, and this machines that they're selling have no way of responding if it gets a prompt from your phone saying, please say who you are and what it is you want. And it doesn't know how to do that. It just goes into its spiel, which is not what it's supposed to be doing, and so the phone just doesn't pass it through.
Which is
Really?
good if you're on the end of it.
Well, it doesn't, I don't get interrupted.
Yeah. Although, is there some way, there must be a way of overriding that because from time to time I get calls from unrecognizable numbers and they're people I want to talk to. Uh, so,
If the person identifies themselves, then
okay,
it'll pass through the call. So
okay,
it's they're trying to get rid of robots talking to you.
right, yeah,
But if it's a telemarketer, it's a live telemarketer, and he wants to sell you siding, and he answers the question saying, "Hey, this is George from, Cascade Roofing or something," it'll pass that through.
oh, okay, yeah,
It's just the robocall. So the way that most of and you can hear when you get a telemarketer, a live telemarketer, you listen to it, you can hear they're in a room with a whole bunch of other people quite often. And what they do is their equipment dials the phone number, waits for someone to say hello, and then they pick up and talk to you.
yeah,
Well, your phone's not saying hello. Your phone's asking, who the heck are you? And Robots can't do that. But if that telemarketer says, "Hey, I'm Joe from Cascade Roofing," yes, that'll go through.
Yeah. Oh, okay, that's cool.
If that goes through, do you have a chance to decline the call or just hang
Well,
up?
see, I haven't actually had that. All of them so far, they've been declined. So I don't know one that's passed through yet. But I do
Oh,
know that people that are in my brother-in-law called me, my brother called me. I've had several real calls, and the phone just rang and I picked it up because I knew who. Well, among other things, I have my phone set to tell me who's calling. So it looks on my address book and it says, "Oh, this is Ian. Oh, this is John, or oh, this is
right.
Margaret." So at that point, I already know who it is. But if it's not somebody I don't know, it'll just ring. And what happens at that point, I don't know because nobody who's not in my address book and wasn't a robot has made a phone call yet.
Ah, okay.
I've only had it for a day and a half. So
Right, right.
I have thought about going over to some random neighbor's house and using their phone to call me just to see what it says because I don't even know what it says. You know. I also have don't ask why. I have my series set to a woman with an Australian accent, and I'm hoping it asks them for this stuff with this woman's voice in in an Australian accent because that would just flummox a lot of people. Uh, but I don't know. I don't actually know what it's doing.
Thank you.
I have also played with another thing on it. It was one of the first thing I tried once my machine rebooted. There is now a phone app on Mac OS. And the phone app, you launch the phone app and you'll see that it's got people you normally talk to, and you can make a phone call directly from your computer. Your phone can be in the next room. It doesn't make any difference. You can make a phone call right from your own computer. You can also have settings in terms of like uh, this setting that I had to decline phone calls. You can make those changes right on your Mac because there's now a phone app on your Mac.
Have you tried that?
Well, again, I don't know I don't have another phone to call myself to actually.
Oh, I
But
thought it uses your iPhone
yeah, it does. Oh, have I made a phone call? Yes.
on the Mac,
Yeah.
and it worked okay.
Yeah, you could do that before, but this new phone app has a lot more functionality. You've got your contact list is built into it. Uh,
Oh, okay.
it's I might actually, the meeting's supposed to start right now, so I might just bring that up and show you. That's not really what I'm talking about tonight, but it's cool. Our president and treasurer are not with us tonight because they have friends from out of country coming to visit them, and so they're off goofing off, so we won't have a report from them. Um, I did want to mention again that I am recording this and the closed captioning as well, so that we'll have a transcript of the meeting. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to paste into the chat window the URL to um, sign the attendance form so that I can know who's here. Tonight I was going to talk about virtual machines. A virtual machine is a way of setting up something on your Mac that your Mac pretends either that it's a non-Mac computer or it's an older Mac. And why you'd want to do that, I'll incorporate that as part of the explanation. But before I do the virtual machine thing, I'll show you the phone app because it's kind of cool. So I'm going to share my desktop. Share. And move that up out of the way. Here's the phone app. And the phone app, it has, your contacts and all that kind of stuff. And What it does not show is it doesn't show you all of these are things that people have actually talked to you. It doesn't show you the list of calls that didn't work, but this is the phone app, and you can actually make a phone call right here from inside of the computer, and it's actually making the phone call with your phone. So it's really quite cool.
Is there a list of the declined phone calls somewhere?
Not here. There is on your phone. So on my phone, which I could actually show you because there's the old phone app. Ah, um, and it's going to tell me that I need to. Okay, these are recent phone calls, and the red ones are ones that it declined.
Oh, okay. So it's just like a missed call, basically.
Yes, and if you look at it and you say, "Oh no, I know that that's actually my, my veterinarian or whatever it is," you can call them up. Um, and this is macOS 26, which we'll talk about next month about different things. But if and when you do update, one of the first things you should do is launch the Tips app because the Tips app, which is on your phone and your iPad, so anytime you want to, you can do this on your phone or iPad and give you different information. It tells you about here's a full user guide to the new operating system, or it breaks it down by category of things that are new and different. So it gives you, it's kind of an index of things that the operating system does. And if you say see all, you see it's broken down really quite nice. If you ever do beta testing, that's one way to tell when you've gone out of beta test, because during the beta testing, the Tips app is empty. It's one of the last things they do. And the reason why they do that is if they try to have some feature and they just can't quite get it to work, they don't incorporate it. And so they don't have tips to it. In the past, they would have documentation that talked about things that weren't ready and it frustrated people. So now it's the last thing that they throw in there. But basically it's a manual on how to use your iMac broken down by topic. Um, and that's tips, and it's on your iPhone and your iPad as well as your Mac. Um, Virtual machines. Virtual machines are basically software built machines. The first virtual machine I had on a Mac was something called um, Insignia. I can't remember what the name of it was. It was back in the days of the 68,000 computers, the Macintoshes of the um, late 1980s, 90s. They made Insignia, and Insignia allowed you to run Windows XP, well, first Windows 3.1 on a Mac. Now, why would you do this? Well, there was a lot more software for the Windows than there was for the Mac. And there were things like somebody would send you Access database. Access is a Windows database, which on anything other than Windows is just garbage. It doesn't mean it's nothing. You can't do anything with it. But with Insignia, I could actually run Windows and look at someone's Access database. And they went the way of the Dodo when a long time ago. And another company came about called Parallels, which is it used to be one time it was a Russian company, then it was a Ukrainian company, then they moved to England, and now they're based in the United States out of Silicon Valley. They built a software version of a Windows box. And when Apple went to the Intel processors in the year 2000, it was a huge step up for them because they could make Windows much faster. And prior to this, the Macs were running PowerPC chips, and Windows was built for Intel. So you had to build a software-based Intel processor to run the Windows operating system, and that slowed it down quite a bit. But once the Macs had Intel processors, then you had to build a PC emulator, but you didn't also have to emulate the processor that ran it, the brains of the PC. Now we have Apple Silicon machines. And that was kind of a blow to the emulation market because Apple Silicon is not an Intel processor. So what do you do about it? Well, as you see, I have Windows 11 Pro here. I have Ubuntu, which is a Linux operating system. And then I have three things with little triangles and then another Windows operating system. Before I actually start this, I want to explain why I have two kinds of Windows. I really don't like Windows. I've been using Windows since Windows first came out, which was like 86, 87, 88. I don't remember. I've been using it for a long time and I've always hated it. And there was this joke in the 1970s that people should get microcomputers and to get rid of mainframes and mini computers because any computer you can't throw out the window is probably dangerous. And even though that was meant as a joke because these early machines were very frustrating to use, I agree with that. So here's my Windows computer, which is just this first item here. And down here is another Windows computer. I can do something with my virtual Windows machine that I can't do with a real one. And that is before I do something dangerous, I can come along here and I can say clone it. And when I clone it, it makes a copy of it. And then if I do something that doesn't work, like I do a Windows update and it kills the Windows machine, I can just literally throw it in the trash can. And you can't really do that with a real Windows machine. The other reason why I like emulating a Windows machine, in order for this Windows machine to work, is working with inside of this emulator, which is working with inside of Mac OS. Mac OS has much better security than Windows. Its Windows security is greatly improved, but still the Mac security is better. So in order for this vulnerable Windows machine to be attacked, they have to first get through the Mac to get to it. So it's kind of it's a castle inside of a castle, and that appeals to me. Ubuntu is Linux, and I'm not going to talk about that in a bit. These ones with these triangles, the triangle means it's not working. And if I click on it, if I double click on it, it comes up and it says Mojave cannot be started because it contains an operating system designed to run on Macs with Intel processors. Such systems are incompatible with Apple Silicon, blah, 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 blah. And it tells you what to do about that. And that's all well and good, but that's not really my issue today because I have a perfectly good Mac in front of me. This Windows machine, well, if doesn't Windows run on Intel processors? Well, I'm going to launch it and we'll find out. I don't know if you've gone to the computer section that they have in, by the way, it does take it a while for it to wake up. I don't know if you've gone to the computer section in Costco, but you can now get a Windows computer in Costco, and some of them will say now with Snapdragon 7 or something, but the key is Snapdragon. Snapdragon is an ARM processor, and what ARM stands for, you don't really care. The important thing is to note that an ARM processor is not an Intel processor. They now make Windows machines with ARM processors. Apple's processor, Apple Silicon, is also in the classification of processors that it's an ARM processor. So the reason why I can run Windows now on my Apple Silicon is now Windows runs on Apple Silicon. So instead of trying to emulate the chip that runs it, it's actually just emulating the PC architecture. And it's much less work for it to do that, but it still takes forever to launch. And while it's doing that, I'm going to launch Ubuntu here in the background because I can do both at once. When Ubuntu starts to launch, notice what it shows on the screen. We're going to set this over here on the side so you can see both at once. No, I don't want you to do that. you'll see that when Linux is launching, it has all this stuff flowing by in the screen. Believe it or not, so does your Mac, because the Mac operating system is built on top of Unix. And Unix was developed during the 1960s by Bell Labs. And the Mac operating system, when they brought it out in 2000, it's actually built on top of Unix. And you just don't see it because Apple masks it away. They're very protective about it, in fact, and mask it away. And this is Windows when it ever decides to talk to me. There we go. And it did not. Ah! And this is not the standard Windows desktop. That's actually a picture I took um, out at the Dungeness pit, Spit. If you're counting, I'm now running Windows and I'm running Linux and I'm running the Mac operating system all at the same time. And Windows is still thinking about booting. Um,
Hey, Lawrence,
yes.
um, why would you run Ubuntu if it's Unix, and why doesn't the Mac do everything that the other Unix does, or not?
Oh, the why would I run Linux, which is a fake version of Unix? Linux stand for Linus. Linux is not Unix. That's the name. That's where Linux got its name. The guy who invented Linux, his name is Linus Torvald, and most of us think of it. He named it that because it means Linus is Unix, but he says it means Linux is not Unix, which is silly, but he's
Oh, so it's not Linux is not Unix.
Linux is not Unix. It operates like Unix. Now, the reason most of us think that he did it is that at the time that he designed Linux, you had to license Unix. And the license, depending upon if you were a corporation or a university, was very different. For universities, it was free. For corporations, it cost big bucks. So, for example, Microsoft licensed Unix and they called it Zenix. It's Zen IX. And Microsoft sold it for about a decade. But then there was a big copyright suit about Linux because about Unix because Bell Labs, when Bell broke apart, Bell Labs went off to I don't remember who. Yeah, I don't remember the company that became Bell Labs. They were trying to get royalties, and then the court said, no, you've been giving it away so long, it's now in the public domain. So it doesn't make any difference. But all this happened before he built Linux. He wanted to build his own version of Unix, and he wanted to build it without having any restrictions on licensing. So you can download Linux for free. And it runs on all kinds of stuff. There are little computers that are, I don't know if my screen, if you, the little thumbnail that you see, you can see it. This is a tiny little Linux computer. Tiny, tiny little Linux computer. The Linux inside it is very truncated, and what it's really doing is it's running a solid state disk drive. So basically, it's an intelligent disk drive, and you can't, it's not a full computer. But the part that runs the electronics is a cut down version of Linux, and that's what it's being used for today. But anyway, this is um, Windows 11 Pro. And I want to show you something that I think is really cool that you probably won't care about at all. But if any of you have a Windows computer, you should update it to Windows 11. And if you cannot update your computer to Windows 11, you should get rid of it because the support for Windows 11 ends in about 2 weeks. I mean, for Windows 10 ends in about 2 weeks, which means at that point it's going to become happy hunting grounds for pirates and such. But this is Windows, and I come over here to privacy and security. And one of the things that is important about Windows 11, um, Apple, when they built the iPhone, one of the clever things they did is they included something they called an enclave, which is basically this little fortress inside of the iPhone. All the incoming and all the outgoing things going to the phone go through this enclave. It's basically it's a security chip. And they first introduced this on the iPhone, then they introduced it on the iPad, and eventually they stuck it on the Macs. And on the Apple Silicon machine, that enclave is now on the main chip. Everything coming into the computer, everything that goes out from the computer goes through that enclave. And that allows Apple to sanitize things to make sure that viruses and terrible things don't happen. Windows 11 adopted that. So one of the things that you have now is, where is it? Device encryption. That's not what I wanted. Windows security, device security. If we go to device security, it says that my Mac has a security processor. It says your security processor, called the Trusted Platform Module TPM, is providing additional encryption for your device. Microsoft started asking manufacturers to include a security chip. And now Windows 11 has it's supposed to run only on things that have a security chip, but people have found workarounds to that. But um, if it has the security chip, it's basically their security has come much closer to what Apple is doing, because all the input and output goes through that security chip, and it can allow you to block things. It used to be that on Windows machines you'd had to use an antivirus program, and I run Windows now the same way I run my Mac. I don't use an antivirus program. And that's built into Windows 11. And that's a huge step up. But this is Windows 11. But I wanted to show you something else that you won't care about, but I think it's cool. This is the terminal that's in Windows. And to get a directory in Windows, you type in dir and it goes and gives you a directory. But I'm going to type in Ubuntu, and we're going to wait a bit while it figures out what it's doing. Now I'm running Ubuntu Linux inside of Windows, running inside of my Mac. And why would I do that? Well, because there are things that you can do with here's how to get a directory in Unix or in Linux. You say ls, and then the al means list everything. So this is Ubuntu Linux running inside of Windows 11. And when you come over here, ah, and that was the wrong password. Yeah, go ahead and send them something. This is Linux. And Linux, the commands to do, ah, the commands to do things in Linux are very similar to what you do in the Unix on the Mac. So to get a directory, type in lsal, it gives you a directory. And an interesting thing you can do is to find out what kind of operating system you're using, you say uname. And uname A means give me all the information. It says Linux, Ubuntu, Linux 220402, desktop 5.15, generic Ubuntu, blah, 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 blah. And it says that it's running on a ARM, 64-bit ARM architecture. Now, if I come over to the Mac and I go into terminal, which of course it's hiding behind my window, so I have to move this out of the way so I can get to my window, and I can blow this up a bit. If on my Mac, if I say, There we go. You name A, it'll tell me what version of Unix I'm working on. And it says Darwin Minion, Minion's the name of the machine. Darwin kernel version 25.0.0, Monday, August 25th is when it was downloaded. And it's on running on an ARM 64 processor. So here I'm running Unix on my Mac, running macOS 26, which is running Linux, which is also running the, don't do that, which is also running Windows 11, which is running Unix. Aside
Uh, Lawrence, um, isn't Windows 11 and all the Windows numbers based on MS-DOS in the terminal?
if you're in terminal, like say if I this right now is Ubuntu, and if I exit from it, because why not? I can exit that. Now I'm back in this, and if you look at it, yes, that's DOS there.
Right. Yeah.
Um, and
So
I
they just keep basing everything on DOS.
yes and no. You really can't run DOS as an operating system anymore. So much of it has been pushed out to the visual user interface that a lot of the stuff that you can do in DOS before, there's just you can't get there from here, as they would say in Maine. But you can do low level things. For example, you can do things like you can say ping CNN com, and it'll go out and ping CNN. But this is actually just a straightforward Unix command that DOS stole. And it doesn't work the same way. Like on the Mac, if I tell it to go to ping CNN, and I'll stick it over here in the corner, you'll just see it just keeps, helps if I spell it correctly. It'll just keep on pinging. And ping means it's just sending out packets to CNN. And if CNN.com is up, it sends me a response. Why am I picking on CNN? Because it's not dangerous and they won't yell at me. Um, don't ping the FBI unless you have a good reason to. But yes, there is essentially DOS underneath Windows, but DOS is no longer a standalone operating system, whereas there's a full-blown Unix in the underneath the Mac. You can do all kinds of tricks. In fact, I'm going to show you in a couple minutes a virtual machine on another machine that I have that I use all the time. But this is this is Unix, this is Linux on Windows, and then it's Windows 11 itself. And to shut down Windows 11, I do it the same way I would normally. Just come down here and say shut down, and it thinks about shutting down, takes a while. And in the background, I've got Linux, which I'm in the shell, and I say exit, and it exits. It's not paying attention to my keyboard. Why aren't you paying attention to my keyboard?
So is the macOS the only true Unix machine?
Oh, no, no, they still have, oh, there it is. Um, there's still there are all kinds of Unix machines out there, but they tend to be large machines now. Unix was originally designed to run on minis and mainframes, and there's most of the internet runs on either Linux or Unix. But HP and Sun and a whole bunch of people still make Unix workstations.
That's right. I used to use a Sun Unix workstation.
Yeah, I think the only part left of Sun is just the name. I think it's actually owned by somebody else. Might be owned by Oracle. But if you look, if you were, you saw when I booted up the Linux that it came up with all the scrolling text. If you could do that on the Mac, and there is a way to do that, except that the Mac tries to hide it, when it boots up, it credits UC Berkeley for the Unix that's built inside of the Mac operating system. The Mac operating system is built based upon UC Berkeley Unix, which in turn is very similar to Sun OS Unix, which in turn is very similar to Bell Labs Unix. So it's got a long pedigree there. And if you look at some of the commands, like for example, let's blow this up a little bit more so you can see. Um, I'm going to show you the command for how to find commands. Um, here's the uname command, which I used earlier to tell me what version of Unix this is. But you can also say man uname, and it'll give me the manual for how to use uname. And it gives you all kinds of things that you don't really care about. But down here at the bottom, you will see that the uname command appeared in PBX Unix 1.0. However, 4.04 BSD, which stands for Berkeley Standard Distribution, was the first Berkeley release with the uname command. And the Mac is based upon Berkeley Unix. The Mac operating system is based upon the Berkeley Sun operating system that came out in, I don't know, like 1980. The guy who started Fun Sun Microsystems, he um, he started as a programmer at Berkeley, working on his PhD. So he was using Berkeley Unix to figure out what he wanted to do in terms of an operating system based upon that. And the Sun operating system was famous for its Windows. You had bitmap Windows and so on and so forth. And that was Sun's claim to fame. And the guy who did this made lots of money and was obnoxious, but at least he had something to be obnoxious about. Um, but anyway, that's Linux, and that's Windows. And I'm going to shut down Linux right this second. Power it off. And you'll see it goes through and shows you all the little things it has to do to power off. And the Mac does the same thing. You just don't see that stuff scrolling by. And to get out of the terminal, here I just say exit, which tells it to get out of the terminal shell. Um, and there is a way, if you read the fine print, there is a way to install a Mac operating system on here. It's just that I haven't got around to doing that because I don't need to, because I have another machine that has all this stuff on it. And that's what I'm going to show you now. If I can find my cursor. This is a machine sitting right over there. It's an iMac. It's an iMac Pro that I bought in 2017. I bought it in November or December 2017. I did not take it out of the box because I flew out to see my mother for Christmas in Bremerton, and a friend invited me up to Scrim, and she talked me into buying a house, and I bought a house. I had this Mac Pro shipped out here, still in the box. I set it up in the box with a security camera, and it watched my house for 3 months while we came across country. So that's this machine. And my Mac Pro, I really, really like it. It's a wonderful machine, and it will not, it can't run iOS 26. So that sucks. But it does have Intel on it. So on this Intel based Mac, I can do things like run Windows 10. Now I told you that Windows 10 you should get rid of it, but my Windows 10 is buried inside of Mac, so it's actually a fairly safe thing to play with. So I can play with Windows 10. There are some programs that I use that run only on Windows 10. Um, and there are some programs that I run that run only on old versions of Mac operating systems, while this is figuring out what it wants to do, I want to talk a little bit about these virtual machines. If I can find my mouse. There we are. Up here at the top, you'll see there are these little icons in the frame, and I can't blow them up, unfortunately. And the first one was, here is what kind of keyboard do you have, and the next one is tells you about the screen and so on and so forth. But these are all things that you can set. And another way of looking at it is by pushing this button. And is it going to let me look at that? Uh, Zoom doesn't like what I'm doing here. There are different settings you can have for the virtual machine, and I'm losing control of my mouse because I'm doing this remotely. This first one is general settings, and then there are, it's not going to let me do this because Zoom doesn't like the fact that I'm looking at another machine. So I'll just tell you about it. And I can actually launch this other one so you can see because it's here too. Go away. There are settings you can have for the virtual machine. The general one is what do you call it? What do you give it a name? I always give them a unique name, and the name includes a date. So this backup I made on August 28th of this year. And this backup of Windows was done in 2020 on June 22nd. I do that so I can tell that it's a backup of when I made it and what I might have been doing at that time. But anyway, you can give them names and describe them and so on and so forth. Don't really care about that right this second. I want to go here to the options. I can say how I want to start it up or shut it down. I say I want it to be shut up, started it up and shut down manually. Can I blow this up? Nope, it's not going to let me blow it up. Take my word, that's what it says. Am I sharing information with my Mac or not? What applications do I have and where are they going to show up? Do I want it full screen or am I going to move it to the size of the screen I want? Can I have picture in a picture? Picture in a picture means that I can have multiple windows at once. And so I can be doing several different virtual machines at once. For web and email, what do I do? What kind of maintenance do I want? Travel mode, and it's got a bunch of other options. Next one's the part that's really intriguing. My Mac here is a Mac Studio, and it has, I don't remember. Uh, it's Apple Mac 4 M4 Pro. I don't remember how many processors it has, but this is important because I can tell here how many processors I want it to use. I can have auto, or I can just pick the number of processors I want to use. And obviously, the more or less processors you use, the faster your virtual machine runs, and how much memory I want it to use. And here I have it set at 12, which is half the memory I have on this machine. It's got 24 gigs of memory. So I want 12 gigs to be used by Windows. And what kind of graphics do I want? What kind of keyboard do I want? The keyboard's a little bit tricky because the Mac keyboard and the Windows keyboard don't look the same, but you can use the Mac keyboard as if it's a Windows keyboard using parallels. But it just tells you how to set it up that way. Do I want to allow Windows to use a printer? And if so, what printer? What network do I want it on? There's a software network connection. So everything that Windows does when I'm running it passes through the operating system, which all the security controls on the Mac actually control what the Windows machine can do, which is important from a security standpoint. Can it use the Mac's camera and sound? Well, Windows has its own security, so I can say, yes, it can use the Mac sound and speakers and microphone and camera, but I also have to tell Windows that it can use the Mac speaker and such. What kind of USB devices does it have? What's the hard drive? You can actually specify a file on your Mac as the hard drive. I happen to know that this particular virtual Windows machine that I was using, it happens to have a 36 gig hard drive, which means that if it was corrupted somehow or something, I just throw that drive in the trash and empty the trash because it's a 36 gig file. But you can have a bigger one if you want to.
What does it do with the Mac file format for Mac files?
When I transfer, well, if I create something on the Windows screen, I can actually drag it out of the Windows screen and drop it onto the Mac desktop. And if it's something like a Microsoft Word file, Microsoft Word can be read by the Mac. Pages can read Microsoft Word. Microsoft Word on the Mac can read Microsoft Word. So it just depends upon what it is. There are some things that um, I would have trouble with, like access databases. There's no Mac way to use access. So if I wanted to use a access database, I'd have to do it entirely on the Windows machine, and then I'd have to export the data. But for the most part, it doesn't really make that much difference. If it's Windows only, I'm going to use it on my while I'm using Windows, and if it's Mac only, I'm going to use it on my Mac. It's when I'm trying to get things out of one format to another. I'll tell you as an example. There are some people who will send, they have old versions of Windows and they'll send me files and it's inside of a Windows email container, which on a Mac just looks like garbage. Well, I can bring it up on Windows and I can save the message as a text file and then I can go off and stick it on my Mac. Or if they send me a BMP file or a Microsoft Publisher file or something else that's weird, I can deal with it. But mostly I use it for things like databases and things that are hard to deal with on a Mac. Um, it tells me about the TPM chip. Obviously, since this is not a real Windows machine, what about the TPM chip? Well, the Parallels emulates a TPM chip because all the security stuff is on the Mac. It just says, okay, what you're looking for is really this. And it gets happy. Here it says the CD DVD is disconnected. Why? Because my Mac Mini doesn't have a DVD player. But if I were to plug one in, I could then give permission for Windows to use that CD player that's plugged into my Mac. And the boot order is kind of important because in Windows, it'll boot off the floppy first if it has a floppy. It'll then boot off the CD-ROM if you have a CD-ROM in the machine. And third, it'll boot off the hard drive. Now, why is it set up that way? It's set up that way so that you can recover from crashes. Windows has a problem with crashes, and it's nice to be able to bail out. So specifying the boot order makes sense here that it wouldn't necessarily someplace else. Security, I can encrypt the Windows machine, so on and so forth. But basically, this basically says I'm just using the Mac for security. And backup is intriguing. I can turn on SmartGuard, which is a Windows backup program, but you notice I haven't turned it on. Why? Because Time Machine's backing up this machine. Time Machine's backing up my machine. I don't care. If I went to restore it, I just tell Time Machine to put the virtual machine back where it is, which is just a file. And I'll show you that.
Lawrence, question.
Yes.
Um, when I used to use a Windows machine, I think it was Windows 10 a long time ago. Um, every day I would get, these messages from Microsoft to update the security and update, I send like 15 files that you had to update, otherwise your machine could be violated. It's like,
Yeah.
is that still true when you're virtually doing this? They send updates to the machine?
Um, Today, when I got up, the first thing I did was I updated my Mac to macOS 26, and that took, oh, I don't know, half an hour. It didn't take that long. And then I spent from about 9 this morning until 3 this afternoon just updating Windows so I could do a demonstration for you.
Wow. So it still has that issue of
Well, it's
Microsoft going crazy with these updates.
It's not so much that it's going, well, yeah, I would say they are going crazy, but part of it is that their updates are layered. When macOS 26 came out, you downloaded one file and it installed it. With
Right.
Windows, you have one update, and then after you have that one update, then you're eligible for the next update, and you have to do multiple updates in order to get an update.
Right.
And yes, they still do that.
So
But
even on the virtual machine, you have to do that.
even on the virtual machine, you have to do that. And it's a pain. And if I can get this to actually talk to me, there's something I want to show you, which is what I actually do with this virtual machine. And will you let me open this? Open with BDEdit. There it is. This is what I do. I have on a virtual Mac that I'm using, and the virtual Mac is using High Sierra, so it's not a new version of the Mac operating system. I do something that's called um, I resolve weblogs. And now that I've opened them, I'm stuck because I lost my pointer. Uh, ah, it wants me to be sitting at that other machine rather than doing this remotely, which is a pain. Uh, but you'll notice that if we could see this, most of these things are numbers. These are log files from a web server. Most of these things are numbers. When your computer talks to another computer on the internet, it does it using the numbers. Each computer on the internet has a unique number. Well, if I want to find out where people are coming from, I want them to resolve. So I use a program running on High Sierra, which is an old operating system, to resolve the log files into something that sometimes has something in English. Like this one tells me that this is a computer on the domain compute.hwclouds.dns.com. And this one is an Amazon bot, and this one is a Google bot, and this one is somebody on Verizon. And it resolves them so I can tell where people are coming from. Why do I do this on High Sierra? Well, I wrote this program to do log resolution about 20 years ago using a piece of code from a guy from at MIT. He released the code, and I incorporated the code into something I wrote. My problem was that his code was 16 bits and 32 bits, but it did not support 64. So there's no way for me to run it on a modern Mac operating system because the code is too old. And he wrote this when he's a graduate student 20 years ago. What he's doing today, I don't know. But I really doubt that he's going to recompile the code so that I can use it in 2025 when he wrote it back in like 19, well, I think he wrote it in 1998. So he did this a long time ago, and there's no particular reason why he would do that for me today.
So
So
there are Mac emulators that let you go all the way back to old versions of the operating system.
well, the emulator that's on my Intel machine will allow me to run High Sierra and Mojave and a bunch of things that
But
I
not on an M1 Silicon.
no, because the M1 Silicon does not. I'm emulating an ARM structure, so I can emulate Windows on ARM. I can emulate Linux on ARM, but I can't do Linux um,
Yeah.
on Intel or Windows on Intel. And his code is old. It's old code. It was written in C, and it came as a compiled library that I can incorporate into my code. But that code, his part of the code is 32 bit. So even if I were to rewrite my part of the code, it's still what I couldn't use his library. And I don't know how he did what he did. I'm clever,
You
but I'm
don't have the
bad.
source.
Well, no, because he didn't release it as a source. And it's credited, the copyright is his and MIT. So he's co-owner with MIT of that code. And I'm not going to track him down because what I'm doing with that is something that most people don't care about. It tells me who's visiting a website, which is useful, but I also use it for diagnostics when people attack things. My homeowners association, I run their website. And this past week, it had 30 some thousand attacks from the Russian Federation. Most of them, if you look at the log files, said that they were coming from the United States or Great Britain. But actually looking through, once I could figure out where it was going, I could trace it back to the Russian Federation. And I need specialized software to do that. It's not something I can go onto the internet and say, hey, how do I do thus and so? Because that's just, it's we're getting into the weeds there, but it told me where it was coming from, and it told me what I could do to frustrate them even more than they are. They've never broken in, but that doesn't mean I'm going to stick up a red cape and say, "Hey, charge me." I'm not going to do that. I'm going to improve my defenses to make sure that they can't get in. Um, why I'm doing it is not something that most people would care. But yes, on my Intel-based Mac, I can run operating systems at least as old as High Sierra. I haven't tried anything older than that because I don't need to for what I'm trying to do. And it will run Windows 10 and it'll do some stuff. I have some Windows 10 software that I haven't purchased for Windows 11, but it still runs on that. And that machine's nice and secure. So the fact that it's Windows 10 doesn't bother me. But if you personally have a Windows 10 machine and it cannot be upgraded to Windows 11, go out and buy a new machine because they're basically toast. I got rid of every single computer my church has that can't be upgraded. Um, I explained what I was doing, and their eyes glazed over, and they said, "Oh, oh, okay, okay." Any questions about anything? It doesn't have to be about virtual machines. It can be about anything.
Well, yeah. So just to confirm what you said, if I've got a couple older Macs with software on it that I use from time to time on those machines, and uh, they can't be run on the virtual system here because it's a different processor and they're not compatible. That's basically as I understand it. Is that correct?
It depends about how old the machines are. Like if they're Intel-based machines, you could you could get a late model Intel machine that could run a reasonably current operating system. You could put parallels on it and you could emulate those old machines on the new machine. You can even transfer files from those old machines to the new machines. Yes, that is possible, and I've done that. When I set up the High Sierra machine, I happened to have a High Sierra machine at the time, and I just said, I used Migration Assistant. It says, transfer it from that time machine back up to you, and it did, and it was happy. Um, because all the tools are already in place. But if they're really old machines, well, let's put it this way. I bought that Intel-based iMac Pro in 2017. That means that it really is 8 years old. The average age of a microcomputer in the Windows world is about 9 months. In the Mac world, it's about 5 years. So I got my money's worth out of it.
Hmm.
And it's still going to be supported by Apple for a while. Um, but yeah, it's at the end of its life.
Yeah.
Um, Lawrence, I was looking at YouTube one day and they were talking about being able to run like Sequoia on a 2015 Intel MacBook Pro. Is that really something that could be done?
No. What they have to do, well, why do you have a Mac? You have a Mac for the ease of use, you have a Mac for the power, you have a Mac for security and privacy. In order to run Sequoia on a Mac that old, what are they doing?
They have a thing called OCLP or something to that nature.
It
That
destroys the security on the operating system. They're basically destroying the security on the operating system to allow
oh,
it to be installed. So why would you want to do that?
but would you be able to use security updates
Nope,
from? Oh,
nope,
you couldn't.
nope. It's
Okay,
it's you're installing a dead end and you're doing it in an insecure fashion. So you're
okay.
basically hosed. Also, that 2015 machine doesn't have the power to run Sequoia. So it's going to be just painfully slow.
Oh, okay.
It's nice that clever people can figure out how to do things, but Um, when when Nobel invented dynamite, people were figuring out all kinds of things you could do now that you had this really powerful compact explosive. One of the things that someone did, a dentist someplace in Europe, he found out that if you use minute quantities, you could explode cavities. Okay, it's nice that he figured it out. Would I visit that dentist? No. You know, there is such a thing as too clever. I've been too clever. I've figured out really clever ways to do things that then I rapidly had to undo because, oh no, no, that was just too, that was that was clever to the point of stupidity, and I need to back off. And running a modern operating system on a machine that's not designed for it is not a good idea. The the new, well, let's take a 2015 Mac. It does not have a security chip. Doesn't
No.
need one. So you completely destroy the security and privacy controls to cripple Sequoia so you can run it really slowly and insecurely on this old machine. Okay, that's that's a clever piece of engineering, but it's not a useful one.
Okay, thank you.
Another one, a clever piece of engineering that I thought was really a fun thing. A couple weeks ago, the Chinese government was showing people this high-speed train that uses magnetic levitation, and it can go like 300 miles an hour. Um, and people were watching it go through the off to the platform and zip down and so on, but there was nobody trying to actually ride on it. Well, somebody snuck aboard it for one of them, and the reason why they didn't have any passengers on it is they can't figure out how to stabilize it. So this guy snuck on board it, and he destroyed this $500 million project because it went out of control and killed him and destroyed the train.
Oh,
So
geez.
yeah, it's a clever piece of engineering, but it's not useful. And by the way, this was kind of a gotcha on the part of the Japanese government. The Japanese government has a high-speed maglev train that they put in service, and it actually takes passengers. And they opened it last week, which they was a month early. But why did they do that? It's because in the Japanese newspapers they had this story about this terrible accident in China, and they thought, huh, that sounds like a good time for us to put our train in action, which can take passengers. So there's clever engineering, and then there's too clever. The other thing to keep in mind, I bought a Mac 2 and when I came back from Japan, and it cost $5,000. That's not including the video card, the keyboard, or the monitor, which brought it up to about $7,500. That's in, what was that? $1,990. Do you know what you can buy now for $7,500? You can buy a whole bunch of Macs. There's just no reason to invest that amount of money in a machine that's 10 years old.
Well, that would be probably equivalent to 15,000 now.
Oh, it would be closer to 17,000 now, but yes.
Okay, well, in that ballpark, yeah.
But you could go out and for a fraction of that, you can go out and get a
Yeah.
Mac Mini like I have that's literally thousands of times more powerful.
Yeah.
We used to measure computer speed in megahertz. An Apple II had a 2 megahertz processor, which means it did 2 million things a second. And with it, it was powerful enough that if you turned it into you had a word processor on it, nobody could out type it. So, that's with 2 megahertz. This thing does things trillions of times a second. Do you know how many extra zeros that is than 2
Yeah.
megahertz? And this has multiple processors. One of the problems that they ran into is the difference between single-threaded and multi-threaded CPUs. A single-threaded CPU is you outline a task. You have a little robot, and you want to get the little robot out of its charging dock, go down a hallway, turn a corner, and turn another corner, and stop in front of a window. The programming for that is actually fairly difficult because you have to know exactly how far it's going to go. You have to have multiple steps. So you figure out how to move forward. You repeat that enough times to get it to go forward. Then you have to tell it how to turn and repeat that enough times to get a 90-degree angle, so on and so forth. So getting that robot from out of its charging docks into this next room facing a window is actually a fairly difficult thing to do. And most computers used to be single threaded, which means that while it was doing that, it really couldn't do anything else. If you get up out of your chair and walk into the next room to go look at the window, are you single threaded or multi threaded?
Oh, you're multi-threaded. Yeah.
Why do you think so?
Because you're doing a whole bunch of stuff at once. Yeah.
Yeah, you're breathing, you're seeing. You would not believe how much brain power seeing takes, by the way. You're breathing, you're seeing, you're hearing, your feet are moving, your hands are moving to balance you, and you're not even paying any attention to that. You're daydreaming about this conversation you had with the postal clerk at the post office earlier today as you're walking towards a window. You're multi-threaded.
Hmm.
Well, guess what? This machine has processors that do things 1 trillion times a second, and it doesn't have one. It's got over a dozen.
Hmm.
So there's a huge amount of power, and the power not only does single-threaded things, but it can do multi-threaded things really, really, really fast. And most of that speed is useless for you because how fast can you take a picture, answer the phone, or so on and so forth? Most of that power is to make this easy to use. So it makes it easy to use so I can look at my phone and it logs me in. That looking at your phone, logging you in, takes a staggering amount of horsepower. We did not have the technology to do that 10 years ago. Even with a mainframe, we didn't have that kind of technology. And now they sold me this in a store. Just walk in and buy it. And you don't need a DoD license or anything. You can just walk in and buy it.
Yeah. No, it's just absolutely amazing, the technology leaps that they've made. Yeah.
Well, it's also important to remember what it is that we use that for. We use those technological leaps to make things easier to use and to give us capability. Like I have, since moving to, even though I ran a crew that, among other things, made these science videos, I didn't really edit video until I came here, and I've edited over 500 videos for my church and probably, I don't know, 50 or so for the users group. Am I a video editor? Not really, but on the Mac, it's not easy. It's not hard to do.
Hmm.
It's not something I ever planned on doing. I take photographs, but I never planned on doing video, and I hardly ever use the video camera on my phone, but I have used it. And for stupid stuff, like there's a fawn in my backyard. It's a yearling buck, and he's got little nubbies, and apparently they're itching. So he was just ripping the shreds out of this uh, rhododendron, rubbing his habit up against it. So I took a video of it and sent it off to my granddaughter in England. Why? Because I could, and it was
Yeah.
easy to do.
Yeah, it's a fun thing. Yeah.
Lawrence, is there any sort of physical limit to the chips? Because right now they're coming out with a new numbered chip every year, like M1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Is there going to be an M10 in another 5 years?
There might be. You have to remember that um, when Seymour Cray made the Cray XMP supercomputer, Seymour Cray's famous computer science made the XMP supercomputer. One of his primary engineering requirements is that none of the cables inside of it be longer than 6 feet. Now, that seems like a fairly arbitrary thing, but he did it because he was interested in the speed. His limitation was the speed of light. The speed of light is 186,000 miles per second, which sounds really fast, but it still takes 3 seconds for light to go from here to the moon and back. It does take time. This thing does millions of things, trillions of things per second. And one reason why it does that is because it's really tiny. The entire the CPU, the memory, the graphics processing, the storage on my phone is all one chip. And because it's so small, it can do things really fast. If it had to go 6 feet out and then 6 feet back to do a process, it would be thousands of times slower. Think about it. It would still be really fast, but it'd be thousands of times slower. So making them small allows you to make them fast. Well, one of the things that they're doing is that Apple was the first personal computing company that had chips that had 8 nanometer um, uh, gates, the little different the discrete parts of the processor were 8 nanometers apart, which is really, really, really small. And then they were first to have 5 nanometer, and now 4 nanometer. The iPhone 7, what is it? 17 is the one that just came out.
Yeah,
Whatever it is.
17 just came out.
That has 3 nanometer parts. By making the CPUs smaller and smaller and smaller, and then adding more CPUs to it, they can make them faster. And the limitation is that the plants to do these cost billions of dollars. Intel decided in 2018 that they were going to build a plant in Arizona to make ARM processors. Intel, they kind of reached a plateau with their standard Intel compatible processors. So now they're going to go with ARM processors because Microsoft is now allowing computers to be made with Snapdragon chips, which means that Intel's not making money. So they're going to start making ARM processors. They've spent over $10 billion and the factory's not done.
Hmm.
It's extremely expensive to build the factories. The technology itself, it's basically it's really difficult and it's really expensive um, to build these factories. So yes, the state of the art is improving, but there's a huge cost to that. And yes, there probably will be an M10 in several years. And will it be faster than what you have today? Yes. It's to some extent that's really not an issue. Um, the This Mac Mini, it's going to be a long time before I max out. And no matter what kind of weird thing I'm doing, it's going to be a long time before I peg it out. Um, so I'm not really terribly concerned about that. I'm much more interested in, and I know that I say this every month, I'm much more interested in privacy and security because locking down your personal information, locking down information about you is becoming increasingly difficult. I've been involved in like 30 data breaches over the past decade. None of them because of anything I did. I was a federal government employee. When they hacked OPM, Office of Personnel Management, they released that they ended up compromising 30 million people. And then they found out later on, oh, well, no, it also includes the military. And so it's closer to 70 million people. Well, out of 330 million Americans, that's a good portion of everybody.
Hmm.
And it's not you're not usually going to be compromised by somebody at the restaurant, the waiter at the restaurant taking your card and charging something with it. That's not usually where the problem is. The problem comes from you're using your card at the restaurant sends it off to the bank, and the bank has a middleman that does credit card transactions, and they're compromised. One of the leading Visa card company middlemen was compromised a year and a half ago, and it affected hundreds of millions of people. And some of the security firms that do security, they had a laptop stolen out of their vehicle, and when they were doing the security, they had you know, millions of personal files on it. So it's not anything that you personally will cause you to be compromised. It's these other things. However, it's really common simply because of demographics for you to be targeted, and you're targeted through scams particularly. So somebody sends you a PDF that's got a virus attached to it that tries to steal all of your contacts out of your contacts and things like that. So how do you protect yourself from that? Because that's a mom and pop thing. That doesn't take a big massive enterprise to do that. That's just done by somebody sitting in a basement someplace or in a coffee shop. They will target you for that kind of information because if they steal $500 from you, but then they also do that from 1,000 other people, that's quite a profit. And it's very difficult to prove. How do you protect yourself from that? You make sure that your machine is locked up tight. And if you're reusing an old Mac or an old Windows machine, you can't do that. You just can't lock the door. This woman talked her into getting a new machine. She had a Windows machine. She was having problems with when she booted up the machine, she get these pop-up ads immediately. She wasn't doing anything. She got the pop-up ads. Hadn't even opened a browser. It was saying to update her Norton, to update her McAfee, and she wanted to get rid of them because they were popping up so much that she couldn't use the machine. So I went over and I did a scan of her machine. She had over 100 pieces of malware on her machine. And she wanted to know what she could do about it. And I said, unplug your machine and go out and buy a new one. And it took her a couple of weeks for her to decide that that's what she had to do. And then I went over and helped her move some stuff over. But the process of cleaning out the stuff so that when it wouldn't compromise her new machine, it was extremely tedious. Now, what would have been the cheaper, less harmful, less stressful thing to do is to upgrade the machine when I asked her to do so several years ago. Which reminds me, if you have an old Mac and you can't update to Windows to Mac OS 26, if you have a machine that cannot be updated, go out and buy yourself a new machine. And if you say, well, my old one's still working, what happens when your old one stops working? It's much easier to migrate all your data from a working machine to a working machine than it is from a dead machine to a new machine. So if you have something that can't be upgraded, buy a new one. It's much cheaper than trying to recover things from a dead machine.
I have a question, Lawrence.
Yeah.
Uh, I get we probably all do, get a lot of stuff, text messages with nothing more than a number, and they claim to be all sorts of people. Usually they're political things, wanting money or talking about stuff. Um, and they ask you to click on them. Now, can you infect yourself by clicking on a text message?
Yes.
Aha. If I don't recognize it, I don't mess with it. I just leave it.
Um, you can actually go into messages and tell it to filter things that if from an unknown sender, it just puts them in a separate category. So your
Okay,
known
yeah.
senders are the ones you see, and the unknown ones, it puts them in a separate category so you don't see it. And every once in a while, I'll go through the unknown senders and I'll find out that, like my dentist, they send out text messages reminding me to come in for my dental checkup. Well,
Right.
that's not in my known list, but when I look at it, I say, oh yeah, that's the dentist. And so I then identify that that's the dentist, and then it
Okay.
shows up in the known ones. But that's already, you have tools to take care of that. The problem with clicking on a link, text can't be infected. But when you click on a link, it opens up your browser, and your browser can be infected.
Mhm.
So that's the part that you want to
Okay, yeah.
avoid doing. A couple years ago, well, maybe it was like 10 years ago, somebody came up with a really interesting virus in the Windows world that if you just received the message, you didn't even have to open the email. Just if you received it, it would infect your machine.
Oh, geez.
Yeah, that was not cool. But the way the Mac's set up, that's virtually impossible to happen. with you might have read about Khashoggi, the Saudi journalist who was murdered by the Saudi regime.
Yeah.
Um, he had a iPhone. So how did they get into his iPhone? Well, the Saudi government spent roughly $50 million creating a project to compromise his iPhone.
Oh,
So if you're not a target of some country, it's probably not going to happen to you. And even then, if he hadn't made one little mistake, they wouldn't have been able to get in. But he did make one little mistake. He had a message that he thought was from a contact, and he clicked on it, and they hadn't. It really was from a contact, but they had compromised the contact. So what he was sent was something that allowed them in.
okay.
I have some on my phone.
I can't. You're distorted. I can't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Well, I can hear you, but it's distorted.
Well, I have something on my Mac that says Zoom in a meeting, sign in to see profile.
Definitely get rid of that. Just delete it. Actually, but you shouldn't just delete these. You can go in and tell that messages are, you can, when you delete it, it'll say, is this spam or you want to block it? And it'll block it. And when in email, don't, I found somebody recently who was dragging messages into the junk folder. Don't drag it. Go up to the menu and declare it junk because that sends a message back to Apple saying, hey, this is junk. So if other people get that message as well, after it gets enough of these, then Apple just won't send them out anymore. It'll know that it's junk. Apple will never send it to you if it knows it's junk. So if you get junk mail, declare it junk. Don't delete it, just declare it junk and it'll disappear. If you get a message, go in and delete it. And when you delete it, you'll get a message pop up say that yes, if you tell us it's junk, it not only says that it's junk and tells Apple or the phone company in this case, but it'll also block that number. Um, and the controls in iOS 26 are even more extensive for that. Plus, I can now screen calls on my phone too. So that's nifty. And I can screen calls on my Mac because of the new Mac app, the new Mac phone app. So they're giving you all kinds of tools to do this, but you have to explicitly tell your Mac or your phone that things are bad because that tells Apple and that tells the phone company not to send those things to you. Now, if you accidentally block your doctor, you'll have to do something about that. But for the most part, it's a really good tool just to keep that stuff from happening to you. Any other questions? Did all of you sign the
Oh,
registration thing?
uh, let's see. How do we do that? That's chat.
In the chat.
Yeah, I'll post it again in case it scrolled off. Next month, I'm going to talk about macOS and iOS definitely, and actually definitely iPad OS too. iPad is the most dramatic change, um, in my opinion. But the thing that so far that I like the most is the call screening on my phone, which is lovely. I haven't had a single junk mail call that's actually rung the phone in 2 days, which is a record.
Is there a phone app on the iPad?
I haven't looked. There is in the Mac, which is cool. Um, but I haven't looked on the iPad. Probably not. I'd have to think. It's a good thing. I'll go and look, but I don't know. I don't think so. Apple tries to distinguish between what is an iPhone and what is a Mac, but they know that since you're sitting at a Mac a lot of the time, having a phone app to control your phone, which is in another room, is a good idea. So the programmers probably developed that because it made sense to them. There are a lot of things in the computer world that were developed by programmers because they were 19, 20, 21, and they thought, oh, wouldn't this be cool? And it's just by accident that it was cool to other people as well. The you should go onto the internet and look at the history of emoji. It's a funny story about a guy who wanted a date, Japanese guy who wanted a date. So he created emoji.
Yeah.
Any questions? Okay, next month we'll talk about the new operating systems. Good night.
Okay, good night, Lawrence. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.